Do you consider yourself a talented practitioner? Well, I do. And if you don't, that's a conversation that we're going to have another day. But we build our practice around being really, really good at what we do, right? We care about our patients. We remember the details. We stay late. We answer the questions. We solve the problems. We develop a way of treating and communicating that patients begin to trust. And eventually the practice starts growing, which is exactly what we all want. Until one day we realize something. Everything we built still depends on us. If you're not there, the team has questions. If something unusual happens, you're the person everyone calls. If a patient is complicated, you're the one who needs to step in. If you want to take time, you have to think about everything that might happen while you're gone. And I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty stressful. And in my opinion, this is one of the hardest transitions that we don't talk about enough in practitioner business. Because sometimes the gift that helped you build the practice eventually becomes the ceiling of your practice. Welcome to Behind the Healing Table, where we get real about what it takes to grow a holistic healing practice and why good healers struggle. And these are the conversations that I wish someone had had with me earlier about business, leadership, burnout, and building a practice that supports your life instead of consuming it. And I don't think most of us were taught to think about this. I don't know about you, but the business coaching in school was minimal. And that's because we went to school to become practitioners. We learned how to treat. We learned how to evaluate. We learned our medicine, our craft, our energy work, whatever your thing is. We developed our clinical judgment, and then many of us graduated and decided to open a practice. Many of my cohorts did not, which breaks my heart, but I think it's because suddenly you realize you weren't just a practitioner anymore. You were a business owner. And if you went out on your own, maybe you hired someone and now you're a manager. And I got to give managers credit here because it's not as easy as it looks, leading others. And then you have maybe another person join the team, and now you're responsible for culture, communication, expectation, training, patient experience, financial decisions, systems, and leadership. And honestly, how many of you out there were taught these things or were even aware we had to be responsible for these things? So here's where I think a lot of practitioners get stuck. And it's where I've been stuck. We keep trying to solve leadership problems with practitioner skills. Something isn't working. I'll do it myself. And I think that's just natural instinct for some of us. Someone doesn't know how to do something? Well, I'll take care of it. A patient isn't happy? Send them to me. You can see how this is piling on here, right? Schedule has a problem? I'll fix it. Something wasn't done exactly how I would have done it? I'll redo it. And because we are very capable people, that usually works. But that's what makes this pattern so difficult to recognize. Doing everything yourself can actually be very effective in the short term. You get the result you want, the patient is taken care of, the task gets finished, the problem disappears. But what happened to the person who could have learned how to solve it? What happened to the system that should have prevented it? What happened to the process that should have been documented? What happens the next time the exact same problem occurs? It comes back to you. And little by little, you become incredibly important to every part of your business. That sounds overwhelming, doesn't it? Because it is. At first, that can even feel good, though. Being needed can feel a lot like being valuable. Those are not always the same thing. I think there's an identity shift that has to happen when you start building beyond yourself. For years, your value may have been connected to what you personally could do. Your hands, your knowledge, your intuition, your patient relationships, your ability to figure things out. Then leadership asks you to create value differently. Now your job might be teaching someone else how to do something well, creating a process so nobody else has to remember it. That's where I am right now. So don't worry, I'm right here with you. These are things I'm going through as well. And I just want to share it so you don't have to struggle as much as I have been, because helping another practitioner become more confident is one of the best feelings in the world. You have to set expectations instead of silently fixing mistakes. Building a patient experience that doesn't depend entirely on your personality. That's different. And it can be really uncomfortable because if you've spent years becoming the person everybody needs, leadership eventually asks, can you help other people become capable enough that they don't need you for everything? That's a completely different definition of success. Well, if you're saying, but nobody does it like I do, I hear versions of this all the time. Sometimes in my own head. And sometimes it's true. Nobody is going to do it exactly like you. But I think we need to ask a better question. Do they actually need to? There is a difference between maintaining a standard and requiring sameness. And moving away from the sameness, trust me, that's very difficult. But those are not the same thing. If you're building a team, another practitioner shouldn't necessarily become a copy of you. They need clinical competency, especially in Chinese medicine when there are so many different ways to treat one ailment. So they need standards. They need communication skills. They need to understand the patient experience you're trying to create. But they are also going to develop their own strengths, their own relationships, their own intuition, their own way of connecting with people. Behind the Healing Table is built around something I believe very strongly. There is a patient for every practitioner. Your patient doesn't have to be everybody's patient. And another practitioner's patient doesn't have to be yours. That isn't competition, that's capacity. That's how more people get helped. Look at where everything stops. One of the easiest ways to figure out whether you've become the ceiling is to look at where things stop when you're unavailable. If you don't answer the question, does the decision get made? If you don't follow up, does it happen? If you're not in the clinic, does the patient experience remain consistent? Can your team solve reasonable problems without you? Can another practitioner develop a strong patient relationship without you feeling like you need to step in? Could you leave for a week and actually leave? Those answers tell you a lot about what you've built. And no, this is not about criticizing yourself. Most of us were never taught this. Nobody sat us down in school and explained. By the way, if your practice becomes successful, you're eventually going to have to evolve your identity. And why is it we're going into this alone anyway? Where is our community of practitioners? But in any case, we learned to become practitioners. We didn't necessarily learn how to become leaders. Leadership changes the question. As a practitioner, you often ask, what do I need to do? As a leader, you have to start asking, what needs to exist so this doesn't always require me? Maybe that's training. Maybe it's a written process. Maybe someone needs clearer authority. Maybe you've never actually communicated the standard that's living inside your head. Maybe you need to allow someone to solve the problem differently than you would. Maybe you need to mentor another practitioner instead of immediately taking over. This is where systems become incredibly important. And I know systems doesn't sound particularly healing. But I think good systems can actually be an act of care. A good system reduces confusion. It creates consistency. It gives your team confidence. It protects the patient experience. And it prevents you from carrying hundreds of tiny decisions in your head all day long. Systems aren't about turning a healing practice into some cold corporate machine. They're about creating enough structure that people can do good work without constantly depending on one exhausted person. Your next level may require less doing. That's hard to wrap your head around. This can be incredibly uncomfortable for high performing practitioners because doing is measurable. You treated 12 patients. You answered 20 messages. You solved 5 problems. You stayed late. You got everything done. Leadership can look completely different. You spent an hour training someone. You created a process. You had a difficult conversation. You allowed someone else to handle something. You spent time thinking about where the practice needs to be 6 months from now. You didn't personally produce the immediate result, but you built capacity. That's leadership. And if you want something bigger than what your own hands can personally carry, capacity has to become part of how you measure progress. So this week, I don't want you to go reorganize your entire business. I want you to observe for the next several days. Notice every time someone needs you, every question, every approval, every interruption, every decision, every task you think it's just faster if I do it myself. And then ask, does this actually require me? Not, can I do it better? Not, would I do it differently? Does it genuinely require me? Because those are very different questions. Your gifts got you here. Your ability to care deeply got you here. Your knowledge got you here. Your willingness to work incredibly hard may have gotten you here. And you don't need to lose any of those things. But eventually, leadership asks you to stop measuring your value by how much you can personally carry. Because the goal isn't to build a business that proves how indispensable you are. The goal is to build a practice where patients receive excellent care. Your team can grow, other practitioners can develop, the business can become sustainable, and you can have a life inside of everything you're building. That's the shift, not from healer to business person, but from healer to leader. And maybe the next version of your gift isn't simply what you can do for someone. Maybe it's what you can teach, build, develop, and make possible through other people. How better to heal more people than to teach more people how to heal like you. So remember, there is a patient for every practitioner. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building a practice that supports you as much as you support your patients and hopefully other practitioners soon.